Presneti, and welcome to Inside Albania with me, Alice Taylor. This week started the holy month of Ramadan, and I decided to speak to researcher and media consultant Nada Dosti about Islam in Albania and what Ramadan means to her. I'm also speaking to Annette Spangenberg. She is the head of conservation at Euronews.al. This week, Albania featured in the headlines around the world as it attended the Berlin Tourism Summit. But what about its eco-tourism credentials? We're going to find out more. Haide Mimoa. Nada, welcome to Inside Albania, and thank you for joining me today to talk about Ramadan and Islam in Albania.
Thank you, dear. It's a pleasure for me.
Now, first things first, can you take me through a typical day for you during the month of Ramadan, from morning until evening?
So a typical day in Ramadan is supposed to be like any other day, with the only difference that we abstain from ourselves from eating and drinking, but not only, also from swearing, gossiping, and every kind of wrongdoing and bad behavior, because we all know that God doesn't want from us only to fast from food, but also to fast from bad behaviors and to clean our souls. So it's not only a detox for the body, but also for the soul as well. So we go to work as usual, and there is no meaning, let's say, to stay up all the night and sleep during the day, because you may lose the rewards of fasting of Ramadan, or let's say you can't achieve the purpose of Ramadan in case you don't experience it.
It's like cheating if you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's supposed to be a random day, but fulfilled with as much as worship that we can do during this day.
So you go about your day normally, but you don't have breakfast, you don't have lunch and dinner, you don't drink water. What happens in the evening?
So we actually have a very early breakfast, which is called sahur, suhur. Süfuri in Albania. So we wake up here in Turkey, we wake up around 5 o'clock. So we have this little breakfast, let's say, and then during the evening, it's during the dawn of the sun. So it's, I don't know in Albania, but here in Turkey, it's 6:30 p.m., let's say. So we have our late dinner.
So you have your breakfast before the sun rises, and then you break the fast after the sunset. So during the hours of the sun, no water, no drinking, no swearing, no gossiping, nothing sinful at all. Okay, and I guess I'm curious as well, are there any traditions, I know you're in Turkey at the moment, but as an Albanian, are there any traditions or customs that take place in Albania during Ramadan that maybe are specific to Albania, and also foods as well when you break the fast and that breakfast in the morning? Are there any Albanian specific traditions or customs?
So unfortunately, it has been almost 10 years I didn't experience Ramadan in my country, and I can say that it is a completely different atmosphere with family and friends. But of course, every place, every country has its unique experience. For example, I had the chance to experience it in, except Albania and Turkey right now, I had the chance to experience it also in Macedonia and Spain as well. So the experience, the atmosphere of Ramadan in Albania, North Macedonia and Turkey are quite similar to each other, maybe due to the fact that we have so many customs and traditions in common. But in Spain, it was completely different, actually. In Spain, it was normal like any other month, except the fact that the small Muslim community there, which is mainly composed from immigrants, usually from Morocco or Algeria, and very few locals, which are reverted Spanish Muslims. So the one which I enjoyed the most, I can say. It was in North Macedonia because, of course, as a musafir, as a guest, everyone treats you like a queen and you don't have to cook and wash the dishes. In Turkey as well, there are some facilities applied only during this month. For example, we have 2 less working hours, which means if the administration starts at 9 a.m. and finishes at 6 p.m. usually, during Ramadan, the working hours are between 10 and 5. Facilities which in Albania are not applied, of course, although Muslims are majority. They are never taken into consideration in this case anyway. So yeah, comparing all this country, of course, I would not change Ramadan in Albania, as there is nothing like home. Being with family and friends and has no price. It's an experience.
So I'm curious, like in Albania, what would one expect to eat at iftar, and then what did you eat at iftar in Spain? How did they differ?
For example, in Albania, we have petula during iftar, or even during sahur. Petula, it's these small donuts, like similar to the donuts, but a small portion.
My stomach just rumbled.
Usually, yes, usually they are served with honey or rachel or jam. And we usually break the fast with this. I remember from my childhood memories, I remember because Kavaya is a city where Ramadan, where Islam usually is much more vivid, it's much more like lived traditionally from the people there. So I remember during iftar they had a special dessert which is called kabuni. I don't know if you ever heard about it. No, actually it is cooked rice with sugar, with honey and grapes, dried grapes. Like it's like, let's say a sweet.
Yeah, I think I've had
sweet
something
rice.
like this before.
Unique custom or tradition in Albania, which I didn't notice in other countries, is that people, and especially other religions, show solidarity with the fasting Muslim believers. Right. And maybe this is related to the fact that we have a lot of mixed families, such as Christians married to Muslim or the opposite. So in this case, other family members, which they are not Muslim by religion, or they are not practicing Muslim, they would fast at least one day.
In solidarity.
Just to show solidarity.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, just to show solidarity. Or, for example, we share iftars with each other, which means that a Christian neighbor would invite his Muslim neighbor for iftar or the opposite.
Yeah, I've been a part of many different meals and bayrams as well. But I was going to mention as well, in the schools, Eid is a public holiday in the public administration as well. Like my daughter has the day off school, which is nice because also for Easter, for Christmas, for the Orthodox celebrations, and then for the Islamic holidays as well. It's a public holiday, which leads me into my other question, which was, do you feel Ramadan in Albania is supported, like culturally and socially, as well as sort of with the administration, or is it something more private? You mentioned there, that the public administration doesn't make any concessions for people who are fasting, but what is your perception of the acceptance and the support for these festivals?
Yeah, I think it's more culturally accepted rather than officially, like in the institutional level, let's say. Because we don't see any facility, as I know. I may be wrong, because as I said, I've been here in Turkey for almost 13 years already. So I don't know for sure, but my perception is that usually Muslims are not considered when it comes to these facilities. For example, I remember many years ago, there was Bayram, like the end of Ramadan. It was election day. Like you cannot... Yeah, you cannot make election day the day that Muslims are celebrating, but yeah.
So, I mean, I guess the country is secular, maybe that's why they don't take these things into consideration so much. But I really like the way, you know, like you said, you know, that people come together and they celebrate the holidays of their neighbors and things like this. And it doesn't really matter if you're a Christian or not. I wanted to ask you as well, do you feel, you know, Albania is known for its religious tolerance? You know, we have 3 main religions here that seem to coexist very peacefully. The same cannot be said for many other countries, you know, where these often cause wars and all sorts of things. So I'm wondering how this impacts in your view, how does it affect how Islam is practiced here? You know, from women wearing hijabs, you know, maybe in schools if children, you know, want to practice their religion there. How do you see religious tolerance and Islam in Albania coexisting?
I think that the notion of the religious tolerance in Albania is somehow overrated or used for political reasons. What I mean with this is that the religious tolerance, which was once before present, before the communist regime in Albania, has lost its meaning nowadays. Has lost its value because you cannot talk anymore about a religious tolerance when you don't have religion at all. You don't have much religious people. You know what I mean? Like during the communist regime, there was no religion at all. But yeah, in some sense, we can say that there is some kind of tolerance if we take into consideration the fact that there is few or no incident between the three largest religious communities, or the fact that they marry, as we mentioned before, they marry each other, or that we live close together. We don't have these separate Muslim neighbors and these Christian separate neighbors. So when it comes to the role of Islam in it, many studies, many researches and reports, and me myself, I have been co-author of the report of Islamophobia in Albania for 3 years. Those researches, those reports have shown that there is Islamophobia in Albania. Any kind of level, whether it is among the society, like people among each other, institutionalized Islamophobia when it comes to administration and institutional level. It is present in the education system, as you mentioned, the issue of hijab in schools, which it was an issue, like for years, it was part of a big debate. And there is Islamophobia in media and any other sectors, the public sectors, let's say. And there is another level of Islamophobia which may be difficult to measure. That is the fact of not being taken seriously, not being taken into consideration as a majority religious community. Like the example we mentioned before, of doing elections during Bayram, during the Eid celebration, which gives us a message that for us as a state, as a country, this event is not an important event. Like you Muslim as a community, you are not important at all.
Look, I have seen people, and I know there'll be comments, you know, on our interview saying, oh, you know, Islam was forced upon Albania. Our religion is Albanianism. We don't care about religion. We see, and I hear people making comments which I think fall into the category of Islamophobia, where they say, you know, they're fanatics. They make the women cover up, and it's becoming extreme. We don't want this. And I think there are elements of Islamophobia amongst that. And I guess as a Muslim woman, how do you feel when you hear people saying about, you know, opposing women wearing hijabs, etc.? What's your view on that? What do you say to the people who are going to make comments like that?
So I have been, let's say, active in this kind of debate for years, like around 15 years already. Like I'm giving interviews and writing articles about this. So usually I didn't allow this Islamophobia to be internalized, which means that it didn't touch me. I didn't allow it to touch me. It made me stronger than I was. Like it made me more active to fight against Islamophobia in this country. So, yeah.
So it's not something, I mean, I guess what I want to know from you is, what do you say to those people? Like, you're not forced to cover, are you? It's not like you're being forced to do it. This is something, this is a common misconception that I hear, you know? It's your choice, isn't it?
Actually, we are tired of repeating this. It's our choice, it's our body. We as a women, why we have to always bring this topic on? Like, I actually don't want to say anything to them. Like, it's not my job to take care of them. Like, they have to take care of themselves. I don't want to deal with them at all. When there is like a big Islamophobic issue, of course, I usually reply by giving my opinion, by writing articles or bringing the fighting of Islamophobia in much more higher levels, let's say with studies, with research. For example, nowadays, today, during this time, I'm doing my PhD on investigating the issue of the veil in the Albanian media, in Albanian social media, because I'm studying social media studies. So as I said before, like, I don't want to deal with these guys because they have huge problems with themselves. So if I reply back or if I work on this issue, it's much more for the others to hear about it, for people who are interested to hear about it. Yes, I am not forced to wear the hijab. The opposite, I have been forced to take it off from my family, so I had to fight for my hijab. Yes, we are not oppressed, and the fact that we are like in different kind of institutions and working and trying to give our contributions, like everywhere we are qualified for and we have talent to do so. So we are trying our best.
Yes. As women, we are these people who say these things, they are the first people that will criticize a woman for what she's wearing or what she's not wearing. You know, there's no keeping them happy, whichever way we want to look at it. And this is really interesting, the research that you're doing. I want to ask you, you know, in terms of combating Islamophobia and, you know, resolving some of these issues, what would you like to see in Albania in terms of interaction from the government or any initiatives or legislation or anything like that? What can they do more to combat this issue?
When it comes to legislation, since we are trying to be conform the European legislation, there are many European countries which accept very few exceptions, which allow hijab in schools as their right. For example, there are many other countries which allow, not only allow, but give some, let's say, some support for the Muslim who are praying, who want to have a space for praying, for a praying room. I don't know if we have such a thing in our administration in Albania. I don't think so, because I heard it was a topic which was bring up many times from the Muslim community. So I would like to see basic rights for the Muslim people. Basic rights such as praying, the right to pray, the right to cover our heads. And yeah, I hope so.
I hope so. I hope so too. And thank you very much for your time. And I wish you a peaceful and wonderful Ramadan month.
You are welcome, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Annette, welcome to Inside Albania. Thank you for making the time to join me. I saw this week the press release that Euronews.al put out ahead of the tourism summit, which took place in Berlin this week, where Albania was the host country, and it's really dominated the news in Albania over the last few days. You know, Albania having the chance to show off its culture, its tradition, its beautiful countryside. And this is all very well and good, but you did raise some issues in the press release, and I wanted to talk a bit about those today. But let's break the ice a bit first. Have you been to Albania? What did you think? What was your experience?
Oh, I've been to Albania a lot of times, actually. My first time that I traveled to Albania was in 2005 already, and I have really noticed huge changes since then, in positive terms, but of course also in negative terms. But generally, I think that Albania is a fantastic country. It's really friendly people,
Yes.
great nature, a lot of opportunities. And whenever I'm in Albania, I feel, I mean, it is, of course, a different country from Germany, but I feel really, really far away, while it is so close, actually, within Europe.
If I had to ask for your favorite place, would you be able to choose one in Albania?
My favorite place, whew, difficult.
It's difficult. I never know the answer when people ask me. I can't pick just one.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have asked me a couple of years ago, for sure I would have picked some mountainous area because this was where I was going back then. Now it's more a river place. For sure, the Vjosa Delta is great. The Narta Lagoon, it's an amazing place. Šušica River, yeah. I mean, there are so many.
Yes, I know the feeling. It's a good position to be in where you can't just pick one place. But okay, there was a lot of talk at the summits about the Vlora airport, and I have done a documentary on this airport. I went to the Vjosa Narta Laguna and I saw where they were constructing it a year and a half ago. And then I saw a stone's throw away, you know, birds and flamingos and nesting sites and breeding sites. And what does it mean for Albania's environmental commitments when something like this goes ahead? Because, you know, they've made this huge pledge about the Vjosa National Park and protecting the river, but then we have this airport project happening as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it sounds really strange that the Vjosa River is designated as Vjosa National Park, being, you know, hyped as Europe's first wild river national park, while an integral part of the river is not part of that national park, meaning the delta, and especially that within that delta, specifically at the Narta Lagoon, an airport is being constructed. And to be very precise, actually, the airport itself is not being built on the territory of a protected area, because that specific part was at one point sliced out of the existing landscape protected area, which is actually a really amazing thing, that you do something like that to a protected area, leaving it like a Swiss cheese, let's say, and then constructing such a huge airport within an ecologically highly valuable area with a lot of birds, and known for its importance as stopover and resting sites during migration times also.
And in practical terms, for people who maybe are not very knowledgeable about sort of biodiversity and birds and things like this, in practical terms, placing an airport, an international airport, in that location, what does it mean? What will happen to the birds that live there, that nest there, that mate there, that rest there?
Well, of course, they will be disturbed by the constant traffic of that airport. There will be lights all the time. There will be, of course, planes flying in and out, passengers coming. So the site will definitely lose its value for the birds, not taking into consideration the fact that the birds themselves, they are, you know, used to cross the site. So there is also a high risk of bird strike and planes colliding with birds.
And that's dangerous, obviously, for the bird, but for the plane as well, correct? No, as in it can cause,
Definitely.
it's a risk. No, I mean, it's a risk for the safety of the plane and the passengers as well. If it's, is this correct? It can cause a risk to passengers as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a huge risk of bird strikes, especially given the fact that the site is also, the Narta Lagoon is also used by Dalmatian pelicans for feeding, flying back and forth between Narta and Karavasta Lagoon. So they are crossing, and I saw Dalmatian pelicans flying above the airstrip. So they are crossing that site. And I mean, I don't know if you have ever seen a Dalmatian pelican, but we are not talking about a small bird. No, it's a huge bird, yes, or a large bird. It weighs up to 11 kilograms and can have a wingspan up to 3 meters 50. Wow.
That's a big impact, potentially. You know, it doesn't bear thinking about. So Albania it's positioning itself, you know, in several different ways. Luxury tourism is one, and ecotourism and sort of sustainable tourism. You've got the Vjosa National Park, but then they're pushing ahead with projects as well, like on Sazan Island, which is the only island, proper island in Albania. It's a really, really unique location. It's just off the Karaburun Peninsula, which is protected. It's in the Bay of Vlora, and they want to build a huge luxury resort, taking over the whole island and part of the coast there. What are your thoughts on this? You know, people say, Albania, you know, tourism is our future. We need tourism. You know, don't oppose these projects. But at the same time, I feel the country loses some of its unique value by going ahead with some of these things.
Yeah, I share that feeling. You were asking for my favorite place in Albania. And it's really hard for me to choose, because still there are so many sites which are not yet developed. And in other countries, it is very difficult to find such places.
Yes.
So for me, and I think that I hope that other people share that feeling, the value of going to Albania is actually finding those unspoiled, yes, places. And I think this is, it's a real asset of the country. And rather than creating large-scale luxury resorts, which might also only be accessible and available to a few people, it might, from my point of view, it would be wiser to protect those sites and to use the asset of those areas in a different manner. Also, taking into consideration, their value for biodiversity and, yes, climate protection.
You're so right. You know, I travel through Albania a lot. And I go to so many places where I often feel as if I could be the first person who's ever been there, you know, places where there's no road to get there, you have to go off-road, you have to hike, it takes hours and hours up the side of a mountain, there's no phone signal, there's no internet, nothing, and you just feel that this is completely untouched or barely touched. And for me, this is one of the things I love most about the country. And yeah, it would really be a shame. And the other thing as well with coastline, you know, we have this huge long coast from north to south, but so much of it is becoming privatized. In the summer, it's very difficult to find a space where there's not a sunbed or a beach bar or some, you know, techno music playing. And I think this is going to become a problem because people want that wild sort of feeling as well. Okay, some people, they want to go to a beach party or lie on a deck chair and be served cocktails. You know, I wouldn't mind myself every now and then, but I also want to go to a beach that is untouched and where there's not big concrete buildings sort of built around. I think there's a balance to be struck, but I fear that we're heading in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the coast is already developed in parts, and if it's well done, then there is also not too much to say against it. On the other hand, we have commissioned a study in the last year to assess the quality of Mediterranean deltas, and it became very clear that Albania still has, or is the only country that still has natural deltas in its country, which means that all the other deltas, including the coastline in the Mediterranean, is already spoiled. So it's really unique. The Vjosa Delta and two other adjacent deltas.
And regarding the Vjosa, I mean, I followed it over the last 8 years from the the campaigning stage, and Vjosa National Park, now pictures of this from all around the world, and then it being granted the status. And I'm not really sure what stage it's at now in terms of where we are with the park and its protection and its development. Can you give a bit of insight onto this?
Well, I can tell you what I know. So according to my knowledge, the management plan is in place. There is a process started for the staff to be hired. And then the construction of the visitor center is underway. So things are progressing in terms of, the formalities, let's say.
Also, at the event in Berlin, the Prime Minister said that they're going to open another airport in Saranda, which is not that far from Vlora at all. We have an airport in Kuksi in the north, which is closed. It doesn't function because there weren't enough passengers. We have the Tirana airport, which is being expanded. We have the Vlora airport, which is set to open. And now in Saranda as well. For me, the Vlora airport makes sense. Not exactly where it is, but having one in that somewhere around there, because if you're bringing passengers into Albania and there's millions coming every year, it's a 4-hour drive, from Tirana to the south. There is perhaps need for another airport to bring passengers in. I see people on Facebook saying, we want to go to the south of Albania, but it's 6 hours from Tirana to Ksamil, or we have to go to Greece and then drive. There is a commercial sense to having one sort of more in the south, but two, I'm not sure. What do you think about this? Should Albania be opening another airport in the south, or looking at other options, perhaps?
Well, you mentioned all the arguments I would have brought up now, that if the Vlora airport does at one point really start its operation, for me, there is no reason for having another airport in such close vicinity. There may be other options to distribute, let's say, passengers from the potential two airports in Tirana and Vlora along the coast. I'm thinking about high-speed trains, which would also maybe be a benefit for...
Any train. I'd be happy with any train at this stage,
Yeah, any train. Which might also be a benefit for locals traveling or commuters traveling into Tirana.
This is what I say. I say, we have a huge problem in Albania with depopulation of rural areas and smaller cities. Everyone wants to live in Tirana. If you have trains connecting the country, if I can... I prefer the north of the country. I'd much rather live there. But for me to get to Tirana, I'm at the whim of the traffic gods. It could take me 40 minutes. It could take me 4 hours in the summer. You never really know. And I can't plan my work around that. But if there was a train that could get me there in an hour and it ran several times a day, amazing. I would happily live in another part of the country. I would be contributing to that economy. It would just make life so much easier. But sadly, no one's listening to me at the moment. I would like to see trains. What's your view of Albania's promotion at the summit? I mean, they really went all out. They really put Albania on the map. It was great. But do you think it's an element of greenwashing when we look at some of the other problems that are going on here?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at the ITB... The country the Minister of Environment and Tourism is promoting Albania as the new tourism destination for sustainable and ecotourism. But the other side of the coin is not being mentioned, meaning that there is the construction of that Vlora International Airport within the boundaries of a protected area, which is a really unique and outstanding area, very closely connected to the newly established Vjosa National Park. We have those changes in the protected area law, which took place about a year ago, which are really concerning regarding the actual purpose of protected areas, because they actually allow the development of large-scale infrastructure, including tourism resorts, high-class tourism resorts within protected areas, within national parks, which are the highest category of protected areas, without having any proper assessment of the environmental impacts. Then, yeah, I mean, there is the constant and repeated recommendations on behalf of the Berne Convention to halt the construction of that Vlora International Airport until a proper and substantial environmental impact assessment is in place. So the constructions at that site are currently going on without a proper and scientifically based environmental impact assessment is in place.
What advice would you give to the Albanian government to, because the country is developing, it needs money, it needs income, it needs tourism. Tourism is a huge success story so far of the country, the amount of visitors that are coming. What would you say to the government if they were listening, to you, to allow them to both follow this path of tourism, but while protecting what makes Albania unique and special?
Yeah, I think that the nature, the unspoiled nature Albania still has is a real asset. And I think that this is to be well protected. And I don't like using that word, but if it's marketed in a smart way, then this would also contribute to bringing income, but in a more sustainable and especially long-term sense. So I think that protected areas are there for a purpose. And from my point of view, the purpose is not development, but to protect an ecological valuable area, which brings assets in different regards.
Once they're gone, once they've been developed, once an area has been touched, that's it. You can't undo it, can you? And once it's lost lost forever.
Well, of course you can restore areas, but they will lose it will take time, it will take a lot of time, and you most likely will not be able to go back to the original state. But there is, of course, I mean, there is the nature restoration law, which is now being pushed on EU level. So, of course, you can do, but why should you restore something if you can protect it in the first place? Exactly. And this is, I think, this is the case in Albania still, which is great and which is really unique compared to other countries in Europe.
So Albania, the Prime Minister said a few days ago he wants to join the EU within the next 2 years. We have the nature restoration law, there's quite a lot of debate around it at the EU level, So I guess let's not get to a point where we have to implement the nature restoration law. Let's protect what we have while we still have it. Annette, thank you very much for your time. That's all for this week. You can watch Inside Albania every Saturday at 4 o'clock on Euronews Albania, on demand on our YouTube channel, Euronews Albania, and across all major podcasting platforms. Until next time, Mira Pavshim.